Does the iPhone 15 Pro Max really take that much better photos than the iPhone 15 Pro and regular 15s? Well, I went out and I took a bunch of different photos with portrait mode, regular, testing detail, night mode, and even video to give you guys the most in-depth comparison to see how these compare, especially now that the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus have that 48 megapixel camera. Starting off with colors and dynamic range, these shots look so similar, but I think the regular iPhones have a little bit more saturation. Now looking at this beautiful sunset photo right here, looks similar, but if we punch in, we see that the sunset actually looks a little bit better on the fence on the regular iPhone. But I have to say, this is the closest I've ever seen a regular iPhone to a Pro phone in terms of dynamic range and colors. Now, the only time I saw a difference in dynamic range is with portrait mode. You guys can see the sky right over there is blown out on the regular iPhone. That's probably because of the A16. And next, let's compare detail because both of these shoot 48 megapixels. So in this shot right here, the only thing I could tell is that the regular iPhone is slightly more cropped in because it has a different lens. And if we pop in here to look closer at the detail, the regular iPhone 15 looks actually better. And now that both of them have a 2x crop, here is an example. Both look great, and taking a closer look, I do see a little bit more detail on the iPhone 15 Plus, and that is because this is actually a brand new sensor, even though it is smaller than the 1-year sensor, which came from the 14 Pro, and we'll see how that does in low light. Now, looking at 3x, this is where I added the regular 15 Pro because it has a 3x camera, and if we take a closer look, we'll see that yes, the quality is definitely the best on the 15 Pro because the other two are cropping in from their main cameras. And taking a look at 5x, because that is where the Pro Max switches, we can see that it is better than the other ones, but not that much better than the 3x, at least for this kind of zoom. So I think if you zoom in, for this kind of detail, especially with text, the sharpening is good, but where we see the biggest difference is from the regular iPhone 15 or the 15 Plus to the Pro Max, which can now zoom in 25 times compared to 10. Now, what blows my mind is that even though we're zoomed in so much more, the actual quality is better as well. And looking at this sign right here, that's the difference in zoom. And then if I punch up the 15 Plus, you can't even read that text where you can on the Pro Max. Bringing the 15 back into the picture, here's just a 1x shot just to show you how far you can zoom in all the way across the lake there, and you can see how good the Pro Max is if you need to zoom in quite a bit. Now, of course, you can always digitally crop, but this is the difference you get here. 15 Pro Max against the Plus. The Plus is not usable. And then here's a real world example where I really needed to zoom. The 15 Plus looks really bad because it's all digital compared to the other two, with of course the Pro Max and that new 5x lens looking really good. And I think you're gonna be really impressed in the portrait section. Now this year, Apple added a new 24, 28, and 35 millimeter mode where you can switch cameras, and they said you have a ton of cameras now, so I wanted to test it. And in this shot, it looks so similar. This is actually set at 35 millimeter on the Pro Max, and the iPhones, the regular ones, they don't have that option. So let's take a look and see if we have any more detail. And to me, it is so hard to tell the difference. So in reality, does it help you using those modes as far as quality? It doesn't really seem like it. It might just be more convenient not to have to zoom in or crop later. And now let's talk about macro mode. Both the Pro and Pro Max have the same cameras. In fact, all the cameras are the same other than the zooms, whereas the Pluses don't have that. But impressively, the 15 Plus's image looks great. And then if I just crop in slightly, it looks amazing, and that is because the lenses are different. Now, if you have a subject that is way smaller, like this tiny flower, that is the closest I could get on the 15 Plus, whereas the Pro Max, you can get those nice macro shots. And getting even closer, even smaller subject, there's the Pro Max's macro mode, whereas the Plus, I had to digitally crop a bunch. And as you guys could see, my hand is in the background. When I didn't put it there, the regular iPhones, they just can't focus that well, even to take take the image. Now it's really cool to have that macro mode, but if you're not taking pictures of subjects that are super small, you guys could see that here, the 15 Plus's image looks great and we have a lot more natural background blur compared to a crop from the ultra wide. And then you could just crop in digitally a little bit and that image looks really nice. And now let's talk about minimal focusing distance. You guys see here the 15 Pro Max is out of focus, whereas the 15 Plus is in focus. And that is because even though both of these are 48 megapixel, the sensor is larger on the Pro Max and it's an older design than this one. So if you gotta take a picture of something that's close up, you can actually get it in focus compared to the Pro Max, which is out of focus. And I can actually get this close on the 15 or 15 Plus, where the Pro Max cannot. And that just means that in certain situations, you will get a better photo on the regular iPhone. And now switching to the ultra wide, all of these have 12 megapixel ultra wides, but they have quite a difference. Now in this good lighting shot, it is hard to tell. We have a little bit of a difference in color. Same thing in this shot. Both images look beautiful. And like I said, this is the closest I've seen them in years. But if we punch in, we do see a little bit more detail. The 15 Plus has more artificial sharpening, but in certain cases, especially when the lighting starts to get a little dimmer, like this shot, in the center, you're gonna see more detail on the 15 Pro Max, and in the corners is where you will especially see a difference in terms of sharpness and detail. So if you really like ultra wide shots, keep that in mind, and you get the macro mode. Now this right here is a panorama. Not a lot of people test it out, but I wanted to see. Here are both of them aligned, and I will say they look quite similar. And then looking closer, I mean, this is really a wash here, where in past years, the regular iPhones would be much worse. And now let's take a look at some selfies, and all of these iPhones actually have the same exact selfie camera. So here, they look so similar apart from a slight white balance difference. Now here I have a portrait shot and both of them look so good as well. Last year, the iPhone 14 was quite a bit worse in the portrait mode alone because of processing, but now we have the A16. And when the lighting gets darker, I think I look a little better on the 15 Pro Max, but my wife looks better on the 15 Plus. Now, Apple also added the ability to make a regular photo into portrait, so I want to test it out because the regular iPhones don't have LiDAR on the back. Maybe they'd be worse because of processing, and here, enabling that, I mean, they look very, very similar. And the same thing with this trash goat that we have. It's a tough one, and enabling it, they also look so dang similar. Now, one thing that's often forgotten in camera comparisons is the fact that the regular iPhones don't have ProRAW, where you get that with the Pro iPhones. And let's take a look here. You see that the 15 Pro Max is a little bit more gray. And then when I go ahead and I edit it and we punch in, it looks like the 15 Plus still has more detail, even though I added sharpening on the Pro Max. It's just more processing happening right when you take the photo. Now in this shot right here, you see it's extremely dark. And then I went in and I edited them, and this is what we got. I mean, I was surprised the Plus was able to be edited so much, but if we look down at their walkway there, you have all these mixes of colors, just streams that are not there at all. And the Pro Max looks like it's a photo that was just taken normally. Here is a shot outside exposing for the sky. Everything is so dark. And then editing them, you see that with the Pro Max, I can make that look like a good photo, whereas the Plus, everything falls apart in the image. You can't bring it up as much. It just doesn't look good. And then this shot of my face, it's not too dark, but I can bring it up. And on the Plus, doing so, well, it starts to mess up with the clouds, dynamic range there, and my face starts looking just really weird and extra saturation. So if you like to go in and edit your photos, having ProRAW is definitely a huge benefit. And now let's take a look at video quality. So this is regular 4K video, and the 15 Plus is a little bit more zoomed in just because of the lens. And then in this 2X mode, definitely more detail from the 15 Plus, and it might just be because of that new sensor and lens. But now that I switched to 5X, you guys could see all the artifacting in the digital crop on the regular iPhone, whereas the 15 Pro Max looks incredible. I don't remember the last time we had such good video quality with a zoom lens. I know Samsung and Pixels have had zoom, but their video quality is not this good. And here, looking at it, having an actual lens, we actually have bokeh and blur, whereas the regular iPhone, you saw everything there. I also tested out cinematic mode just to see if LiDAR helps out with better cutouts, and looking at this, they both look very, very close. Just slight imperfections on the edges, but this is a very tough shot, so don't think that you need a pro phone for this. Now, what about stabilization? This is using the action mode on both of them, and they both look very equally stable, and I was running like crazy in this shot. The only thing that I could tell is that the video quality from the ultra wide on the pro phone is definitely better. And here I have some selfie video. Both of them look so close. I wouldn't say there's any difference. I think the A16 has plenty of power now to keep up and keep the quality perfect. And then in low light, how was that smaller 48 megapixel sensor? Well, it looks really good. I mean, it's better in some ways, maybe slightly less detail in the text, but better in other areas. So overall, I'm really impressed. And the sensor in here, they're probably gonna use for many years because it is really good. And now let's get into portrait shots where it's gonna get kind of crazy. We have 3 different cameras. We have 5x, 3x, and then just a 1x with a crop. Now you guys see in this shot right here, my wife looks really different, and the background looks really different as well. And here I'm gonna start out with just the Pro Max and the Plus because the regular Pro has the same exact photos in the standard lens, and the quality looks very similar, maybe actually slightly more detail on the 15 Plus. Same thing with my son right here on his bike. Both do a great job in punching in and seeing him after he just had some cupcakes there. He looks slightly more detailed on the 15 Plus. Now in this shot right here, I wanna see how far back could I get and how portrait modes still work, and it's the same on both. This is right when they cut out, but with the 15 Plus, you can get quite a bit closer to your subject and still use portrait mode, which is really cool. Now, the shot right here, I'm testing for not background blur, but foreground, so you guys can see that edge right there. And the one on the 15 Pro Max looks really good and natural. The 15 Pro actually looks the worst. Now here's a regular portrait shot for reference, and then I'm gonna switch to their portrait zoom mode. So we have 5x on the 15 Pro Max, 2x maximum on the 15 Plus, and 3x on the 15 Pro. So that's nice to be able to get that close. Here's another example of my wife. And I mean, having that 15 Pro Max shot looks so good. Instead of seeing that whole tree and everything kind of just has extra separation, compression. It looks awesome. Now, that's also great for a shot like this, where the 15 Plus, with its only 2x portrait, you cannot actually focus at that point. You don't get a portrait mode, where the 15 Pro you do and the Pro Max, you absolutely do. Now, framing all the images the same, you guys see a massive difference. Now in this lighting, the quality looks very similar, but the 15 Plus at 2x mode, you see so much of that background compared to the 15 Pro gets better where you can still see the road, but the Pro Max, everything disappears and we have that beautiful compression. Same thing here, we have 2x versus 5x. You don't see any of that background. You just get a beautiful portrait and it's more resistant to flaring. And then in this shot, this is just an excellent example. We have a 2x portrait, a 3x, and then the 5x. On the 5x, I can literally kind of move away the houses and the road there, and you just see right what's behind it. So that's called compression. That's amazing to be able to get and get just a nice looking image. Now here's the first shot. Once again, you guys can see that beautiful blur on the 5x lens without any distraction in the background. Now on the 15 Plus and on the other phones, you can actually go ahead and you can turn up the blur to the maximum, which I did here, but that still doesn't change the compression and it doesn't change other stuff that is in the background. Now, one reason why photographers love longer lenses that are zoomed in more for portraits is because it makes your face look more natural. So here in the 15 Plus, you guys could see there's some warping going on even in the 2x mode, whereas the 15 Pro looks better and the Pro Max looks the best. The face just has a nice proportion to it. Now, I'm really glad that Apple added the 2x portrait mode to this camera because for years, you just had 1x, and then because of that, you would get a shot like this where you see that warping, and then if you get closer, here's an extreme example where you have all the warping there on the 14, but the 15 with 2x, it looks better. But of course, having a 3x or a 5x lens definitely looks nice. And one thing I haven't talked about much here is the quality of the portraits as far as detail. Well, looking at it, I'm so shocked. The 5x, even though it's a longer lens, usually the quality is worse. Apple has done an incredible job with their new design that's different from Samsung or from Google. And now we have some lower lighting here, not night mode just yet, but this is where it gets a little tougher for these cameras. And even though I like the Pro Max's photo, the 2x on the 15 Plus looks slightly better in quality, but of course the other two Pro phones can do the same thing if you choose. Now here's a shot of 5x versus 2x. Now one thing that people say is that you could just crop it in post and get some more compression, and yes, that does help out, but then the quality starts to fall apart, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. And here, framing them all the same, you guys just see that difference in compression and background blur. And now let's get into night mode, where it's gonna get interesting. Now we're gonna start out with portrait since we were on it, and here the 15 Plus looks better under this street lighting. And then looking at 2x modes on both, once again, the 15 Pluses looks better. It's just a newer sensor, even though it's smaller, and the lens is an f1.5. Now in this shot of me, we have a 5x photo, a 2x, and a 3x. And I will say the 5x looks really, really good, maybe too warm, but as far as detail, and a 3x on the 15 Pro doesn't really help it much compared to the digital crop. Now as the images get darker, we start running into another issue. Even though we have a 48 megapixel camera, Apple is still not allowing this phone, the 15 and 15 Plus, to take night mode portraits in combination. So when you're taking a shot like this, you'll see that the 15 Pro Max just looks better because it could do both at the same time. And in this shot, it's an even more drastic difference. The quality goes down a lot because if you're selecting portrait, you don't get the night mode. And in this picture, the portrait mode didn't even work, but night mode also didn't turn on. So that really sucks. Now here's another example for you guys in this studio of Vadim. The quality difference is crazy being able to have night mode portraits. And here, not as dark, but we have some bokeh in the background. I really wish Apple would give this to us because other Android phones have it, even without LiDAR. And now for regular night mode shots, this is an ultra wide, and the difference is insane. Now it was super dark here, but the 15 Plus's ultra wide camera is just not as good. Nowhere near as good if you take a look at this image right here. It was crazy dark, but this seems like comparing, an iPhone 10 to an iPhone 15 in terms of quality. Now here we're comparing the 1x lenses. Both are very, very close. And from this shot right here, the 15 Pro Max just looks a little bit brighter, which is what I tended to see. But one interesting thing is, if you look here, the 15 Plus's image looks more detailed in the rocks. Now the water doesn't have as much motion blur, and that's because the 15 Plus tended to take night mode pictures quicker than the more expensive 15 Pro Max or 15 Pro, maybe because of the newer sensor. This shot right here is on a tripod, and they are both very similar, other than the Plus being slightly darker. And now we are switching to a 2x crop on a telephoto. I would say the 15 Pro Max looks a little bit brighter once again. I also wanted to add in ProRAW in night mode. So here, Lean is completely dark, and I pushed both these images as much as I could to get some detail from her face. And the 15 Pluses just falls apart without ProRAW. And now let's compare the zoom photos in night mode. This is all of them set to 5x. You can see the 15 Pro Max definitely looks the best. This is a 3x shot right here, and the 15 Pro looks better because it actually has a 3x lens instead of cropping. This is another 3x shot, but here the difference isn't that big. And this one is a 5x zoom, so surprisingly, the 15 Pro really kind of kept up in night mode. And then finally, a 5x on all, and it's crazy how much detail we get from the 15 Pro Max, and that the 15 Plus, even though it's a crop, actually looks better than the 15 Pro's 3x lens. So overall, what is my conclusion? Is it worth getting the 15 Pro Max? Well, if you like to take portraits, I would say absolutely. I love that 5x lens. If you zoom in and you take photos like that, it is great. Now, with that said, the quality difference for regular photos with the main camera between these have never ever been closer. Many times this is actually better. So if you don't need to zoom and you don't want to take zoom portraits, you don't care about that, and you don't take nighttime ultra wide pictures, I don't think you're missing out by getting a 15 or a 15 plus. It does an awesome job. But if you care about photography, there are definitely a lot of differences. You guys let me know what shocked you the most. This has been Max, and I'll see you in the next one.